I would hopefully lean douchebag for the sake of everyone on Millage Avenue.
Things we have learned this fall camp about the University of Georgia football team. I'll tell you this right now. What we know off of fall camp intel and what we know so far, this defense is legit. This defense is going to be really, really good this football season. And it sounds like you can consistently create problems for this offensive line. And if you can consistently create problems for this offensive line, I think you're going to consistently create problems for pretty much every offensive line. You are what we would categorize as disruptive despite the major concerns of depth on the interior of this defensive line right now, which takes us to the other side of the ball. The offensive line is really, really deep, and it is really, really good. Okay, and it has been like that for, basically Kirby's entire run. This is on par with any offensive line you guys have had. Maybe a little bit higher from a standpoint of not only quality depth, but quality experience. Like, you got 4 or 5 guys that have had dozens of starts at this point. It seems like Xavier Truss is going to play in north of 50 football games by the time he is done during his time at the University of Georgia. The same will be said most likely for Tate Ratledge. I think he's going to creep up north of 45 in this football season. The rookie, if you will, is Ernest Green. He had 14 starts last year. So there's a lot of experience on this football team on the offensive lines front, and they're really, really talented and really, really good. We know that after this fall camp, and we kind of knew that going in. What we didn't know going in was this running back room is going to be this deep and this good. This running back room's taking a little bit of a ding as of late with Roger Robinson struggling with a little bit of a toe injury. But all that being said, they are really, 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 really deep at this point in that room. Whereas last year you started the season with, hey, we might be giving Cash Jones the opening season snaps with Roger Robinson as a true freshman backing him up. It's a very vast, different football team and situation from where you were last year at this time. Oscar Delp is a serious vet on this football team. We've learned that this fall camp, I think. And I think we knew that going into the spring situation, but it was still a lot of talks and remnants of the Brock Bowers story, and he's going through the draft process, and everybody's still inundated with the Brock Bowers situation and what's going on with him and the historical pursuit there at the tight end position. But it's finally Oscar's room, and he is, as Todd Hartley said, the unequivocal leader in that room. And I think that's a little bit of a turn of the page in the career arc of Oscar Delp. Colby Young is a matchup problem, but he's still got to catch up, right? There are days and days and days and days and days and intel and sources and sources and sources that will call you and tell you, hey, Colby Young's a matchup problem. Colby Young is really, really hard to cover. You know why? Because most of the time practice is going on, they're not doing team. Practice might be 2.5 hours long, all right, or however long it is. It might be 2 hours long, it might be 3 hours long. The majority of that practice is not 11-on-11 football. The majority of that practice is not in the huddle, line up, go break the huddle, go do what you do. The majority of that practice right now on campus honing the craft and honing the skills. So they're doing one-on-ones. They're playing 7-on-7. They're doing 2-over-2 drills. They're doing individual drills. They're doing stuff where the talent shows, okay? And there is no doubt about it. Colby Young is very, very talented and extremely hard to cover, all right? Still got to learn the offense. Still got to learn how to be effective in the offense, and that is still showing true. So though he is a matchup issue and a matchup nightmare, which is a good box to be checking right here in August, because it's good to know that you didn't buy false goods in the portal. Still got to catch up with the offense. That is obvious through this camp. Tate, and this has been by proxy of Jared Wilson being banged up with a slight Achilles tightness this fall camp. Tate in the spring told us during media availability he's not necessarily 100% comfortable right now at center. He is now. We have found through fall camp and through Jared Wilson's injury, those have been valuable snaps for Tate Ratledge. We'll talk a little bit about Jared Wilson and our questions still remaining here in just a second. KJ Bolden, Ellis Robinson, Nate Frazier will all play at points this season. I think we have learned that about those 3 freshmen this fall camp. Not to say that other freshmen aren't going to crack the lineup or other freshmen aren't going to get meaningful playing time. We know that's not the case. We know there's 5 or 6 every single year, it seems like, that cracked this lineup for the University of Georgia. I will tell you who I think is going to be the first. It's either going to be KJ Bolden, but I think it's going to be Nate Frazier. I think Nate Frazier is going to get playing time against Clemson and meaningful playing time against Clemson. The linebacker room is as advertised as it always is at the University of Georgia. Extremely quiet camp this year out of the linebacker room, which tells me they are exactly what they need to be. Speaking of quieting, Jonel Aguero seems to have quieted the room at Star. I felt like all spring, particularly early on during the spring process of spring practice, heard a lot about, hey man, we need Jonel to catch up. We need Jonel to speed up. We need Jonel. We need Jonel. We need Jonel. Haven't heard a word about him, which means if I'm not hearing about you, you must be doing well.
That's good news there.
Anything else, boys, that you've learned about this football team this spring or this fall camp?
Yeah, I learned that they completely tore this roster down to the studs with how they approach install and going about things.
Assume nothing.
Yeah, I mean, they've truly, like, a lot of times these mantras and things, or you use them, can kind of just be fluff. They are truly meaning assume nothing. The way they've gone about install with how you detailed offenses doing certain things, it shows that they are keeping things fresh. They're assuming nothing. The fact that Kirby Smart's in year 9 of being a head coach and he's still finding new ways to get a team ready for a season is very impressive. My other takeaway from this is that Kirby Smart's concern for the sport of football itself is continuing to grow. We saw him talk about this after the 2021 National Championship, where he was on an interview with, I believe it was Reese Davis, and he talked about how he's worried about good coaches leaving the sport. He's constantly alluded to that. He came out in the presser and used the term deterioration of college football.
Deterioration of football?
Just football in general. Like,
we down bad, he said.
Yeah, I mean, it's a concerning thing for him to talk about, and he lays out good points as to why. The trickle-up effect of high school athletes, the depth seems to be thinner and thinner as you go on. So that was something I took away from this. It's not necessarily about the team, but Kirby Smart really hinted at that, and that was surprising to me. The third one I have is the leadership seems to be improved from this time last year. Kirby Smart also mentioned that how it seems more organized. They seem like they're more cohesive as far as that goes. There were still really good leaders on that team last year, but maybe things weren't as firing on all cylinders as they should have been. And then
I think their leadership from a discipline standpoint on the field, I can't even believe I said this because now I'm opening myself up to the off the field stuff. But like you said, the alignment, the assignment, the details of stuff, that's fine. Still wonder who the vocal leader on this football team is.
Yes.
Right now, to this day, 16 practices into fall camp, I am still wondering, hey, middle of the halftime speech, who's giving it? Who's MFing this whole entire roster to get their blood flowing? And maybe it'll hit like just absolute meth the first time that guy does that, and it's okay because it won't be needed until then, but somebody's going to have to fill that role.
Very
and
true.
Be comfortable doing so. Not feel like you got to do it because you're the older statesman. I heard that so much this season or this week, this camp. Dalen Everett, I'm vocal now because I'm the older statesman in the room. I looked around, I'm the oldest guy here. Dan Jackson, well, I got to do it now. Bullard's not here. Tate Rowledge, I got to do it now. Cedric's not here. Carson, I got to do it now. I'm the starting quarterback. Everybody's looking to me. It's the only thing I'm worried about. But it doesn't matter until it matters.
Yeah, that's
kind of like Ryan Day's quarterback play.
I think that's something now where it's going to come to a head and it's going to happen or it doesn't. That's going to be very big. It's going to indicate whether you come back from maybe being down against Bama at half or something like that. So I think that's something it's going to happen when it happens.
We have confirmation of how sororities did it in the thousands from Laura K in the chat. Shout out to the ladies making the show today.
Shout out.
Laura K says, as a former sorority girl at UGA in the early 2000s, we never had rules about touching rushies. So it's supposed to be a new rule.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure they've changed a lot. I just know that the sorority girls I've talked to, that's what they've said. It's you're not allowed to touch them.
Anything else we learned about this camp other than you're not allowed to touch sorority girls?
Yeah, I put defensive backroom is absolutely loaded. It really wasn't ever a question, but you knew that it was going to be Dalen Everett, and you knew it was going to be either Daniel Harris or Julian Humphrey. Now Ellis Robinson has emerged into that mix as well. And it seems like Dalen Everett, people are getting more comfortable knowing that he is going to be the guy in that room, the top guy. I think people came into this a little concerned a little bit just because that's the thing that people do with defensive backs. I think people are very comfortable with the number 6 leading the way there. The 2024 recruiting class already looking like a massive hit. You hit on the freshmen that are going to play immediately this year. Daniel Calhoun has already emerged as one of these names that, if needed, he might be a name that they call on, like if they get him put in one of those situations.
Serviceable, ready to play.
Absolutely. So that this 2024 class, a lot of good names that are already being talked about. The linebackers, Justin Williams, Chris Cole, Christopher Jones, those guys are sounding like they're going to be hits. Joseph Jonah continues to be brought up. This 2024 class already sounds like you've hit some home runs with them. And then the last one, no roster is ever as perfect as it seems on paper. As glowing as this roster was initially, like right after the 2023 season concluded, you push forward to 2024 and you see just the over the top glance of Georgia's roster, it looks like it is an ideal, very perfect roster. And then Kirby Smart comes up to you and says, well, I'm concerned about depth because I feel like we don't have a lot of depth. Then you kind of analyze it from the perspective that we did earlier this week. And you're like, maybe there is a little bit more, not questions, but they're just more. I don't know how to put this.
Eyebrow raisers
on this roster than what you thought.
Let me ask you